Hi everyone. So I have a guest today for you guys. As promised, I have this wonderful person with me, Arshia Jain. She's a hotshot superstar creative director at a leading creative agency, ad agency in the country. But that's not why she's here. She's here today to give us tips on IELTS. Let me tell you, she's a CLB 10 scorer. She is currently an express entry applicant, and that's it. Arshia, please tell us something about yourself and tell us how much you scored, etc., etc.
Sure. Thanks, Momita. So, I started preparing started applying to the Canada Peer last year in 2020, and I gave my exam earlier this year, and I prepared for IELTS for about, I think 21 days before the exam. So I think that's the first thing about IELTS I would want to share, that people think that they need a lot of time to prepare for it, but that's not true. I think 30 to 40 hours are enough. So that's how much you need for IELTS, even if you're not that fluent with English, because you just need to prepare for the test format and the way it is. So 30 to 40 hours, which means a month of 1 hour every day, and that's how much it takes for you to prepare for the exam well and score a decent CLB level score. And I Since I am a copywriter, so it was slightly maybe easier for me because my job is to do it to write in English every day. But I because of that, I found the right kind of training material, and I knew what would be the right things to do to get through the exam very well. There are four different parts: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. I'll start with telling you about the scoring system first of all. I scored.
Just one thing. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
interjecting. We'll get to that, of course. But also tell us that we should also not get, like, for example, you are a copywriter. It's easy for us to think that, okay, since we've been doing this for so long, we don't need to prepare, and that's also not right. You need a little bit
Yeah.
of preparation, right? Because you told me something about it. Could you just spend 1 minute on that?
Yeah, so definitely, even if you think that you're really fluent in English and that's your like first language, and but this test still needs a little bit of preparation. Even for people who think that it's an easy peasy thing, I can just go in and do it. But I would still request you to take a few days of looking at the format very well, because all tests, competitive tests like these, need a lot of know-how for the format itself. So the four different types of exams that they take to test your English knowledge, what they do is, what they're also trying to understand it, that will you be able to sort of converse in English in a country where English is very fast spoken and it has different accents, and you have people coming in from various parts of the world. So to
Right.
understand your English skills, they test you in a very specific way. So it's great to know to sort of equip yourself with the format very well, and it will give you the highest scores possible because of that.
Great. Okay. So let's then now come to the format of it. I'd just like to tell the viewers again that there are no two bodies like there used to be earlier. We had IDP and we had British Council who would conduct these exams in different parts of the city. Now it's only IDP. Everything's been taken over, and this is for the viewers to know, for every applicant, that you can no longer apply through British Council for IELTS examination. It's exclusively IDP now. I think it's nice. It's because a lot of people, there were debates going on about how IDP is lenient and British Council is not, and vice versa. People were thinking that, but that's not the case. Now it's one body, one unit, and all the disparities are gone. So with that, Arshia, I'd like you to just introduce everybody, to the format of the exam first. Meaning, of course, we know that there are four, listening, reading, writing, and speaking, four categories. So if you just kind of shed light on each of those in in
Sure,
brief.
sure. Yeah. So first of all, I'll talk to you about how IELTS is scored. It's done on a scale of 9, and from within 9, you get scored for each of these four different parts of the exam that there are. And what we are trying to focus on is Canada, applying for the Canada PR, right? So
Yeah.
there are two kinds of IELTS. There's general training and there's academic. What we'll be focusing on is the general training exam, And that's the kind of and there are two different parts to it. Even the preparation is different, the exam is slightly different. So be very careful that whatever study material you look at and whatever prep you do, whatever articles you read, that you're focusing on the general training part of it. This, like, that's the first lookout for anyone who's starting to prepare for this thing. And
Academic is for students, basically, people who
yeah,
want to go study, as the name
yes.
suggests. Yeah.
Yeah,
Please.
and some maybe some jobs will ask you for an academic exam. Maybe
Okay.
some universities will ask you for an academic IELTS test. But for Canada PR, it's strictly general training. There's no difference in that for anyone. So
Okay.
that's a first takeout. Then when you come to the exam itself, there are four different parts to the exam. There's reading, there's writing, there's listening, and there's speaking. So all four are different time formats and different kinds of questions that come to it. The best source to understand what the format is like is the IELTS website itself. We'll add a link for you to understand.
Yeah.
Momita will be sharing that with you, and over there you will get a very detailed analysis of how many questions each of these sections have, what kind of questions do they ask, how long these particular parts are for. So all of those details, the best source is to look at the IELTS test because they sometimes change as well. So what we might tell you right now might not stay true after maybe in a few months or in a few weeks. So the best, like, I won't give you, like, the exact details right now, simply because stick to the IELTS test format website where they give you all these details in absolute clarity.
Right. And as I understand, I think the speaking test happens separately, and the other three
Yes.
are together in one.
Yes, we do. Yeah,
Okay.
they do.
Okay.
So as soon as you would reach a test center, once you're there, the first thing that happens is a speaking test, which is
If
generally
it's
a 10 to
scheduled on the
15
same
minutes.
day, you can schedule it on
If,
a different
oh,
day as well.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
also true. That's also true. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
Speaking sometimes is scheduled on the same day or maybe on a different day, but speaking always happens before your the computer-based test or the writing paper written test, whatever you do, and it generally happens before the written test that we give.
Super.
And oh, I think that's also a point that maybe we should mention, right? That
Yeah.
IELTS also happens in two forms. One is a computer-based test, and the other one
Yes.
is a written-based
Paper
test,
based. Yeah. Yeah.
paper-based one.
Yeah.
So that's also something that happens. My recommendation would be a computer-based test if you're familiar with computers, because that's easier and you don't have to write. Your typing is faster, and as we go forward, you'll understand listening, reading, and writing. It's better when it's done on a computer-based exam. So, and
Right.
that's mostly what a lot more centers do now.
Right.
And they're very well managed, and the computers and everything, there's no glitches or any difficulties over there if that's a fear. So computer based exams is what I would recommend for everyone for IELTS.
Great. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, in that case, Arshia, let's just dive into the individual, categories. Then, let's start with the most difficult one. I feel that everybody, including me, I think we have a habit of thinking that writing will be easy, or some people actually find it really, really hard. And I've heard that it's actually really, really difficult to score in writing. And most importantly, Arshia, which we should have done in the beginning, is please tell the audience your score so they know how much you scored and what. If you want to share your screen, fine. Even if you don't want to, that's completely okay. Just tell us how much your score was. We really, I know the scores and think they're very, very impressive. And please tell everybody what your scores were.
Sure. So, as I said earlier, this is it's on a scale of 9. On listening, I scored an 8.5. On reading, I scored an 8.5 again. In writing, I scored 7.5 on 9, and that's generally like the highest that Indians end up getting
Wow.
on IELTS. And speaking, for speaking, I scored an 8 out of 9. So it was an overall score of 8
That is
points
brilliant,
on IELTS.
everybody. If you want to know, I don't think that I could have managed to get a better person for this. That is crazy. And going back to what I was saying, so let's start with writing. I think it's like the most tricky one. Because people just don't know. Like I know people have scored like even 9, but in reading they don't know how to score. But their writing scores are really, really bad. So what are some of the uh,
Yeah.
if there is a don't, that you'd like to tell us?
Hmm.
Writing.
Yeah. So in writing, I would definitely recommend you to not be verbose. Like what we end up doing is that we feel that if we write beautiful, flowery language, that's something that will convince someone that we are great in English. That's not true. They're looking for great vocabulary, but not unnecessary adjectives. What they're looking for is simple, well constructed sentences, sentences that flow well together. That's something you should focus on, and not words that no one's heard of. That's
Hmm.
completely not their criteria for writing tests. So what
Hmm.
we tend to do is that we cram up these difficult words that we feel that no one knows about and try to put them all in writing tests. That's
Yeah.
totally not something you should do. That's a big
That's
don't. I would
flabbergasted.
suggest.
And
Yeah,
just because I know the
exactly.
word, let me just throw it in there.
Bamboozled, and words like please don't use them in a writing test. Complete big no on that. Use your vocabulary. Maybe yes. If you want to use nice idioms and phrases. That's something maybe you should sort of spend your time on. That's a new
Great.
skill that you can learn for the writing test. But definitely no heavy words and unknown words to impress the person
Super.
testing your.
So
Yeah.
no no heavy words unnecessarily, no heavy adjectives, but idioms and phrases for sure because they do add to your writing. That's great tip. Ashik. Anything else that you need to know?
One more thing that I would definitely add to it is that what they look at is when they're looking at your writing tests, that you
Hmm.
divide your essay in a
Hmm.
very nice, well flowing structure. So don't
Okay.
lose your train of thought. If there's a question about something, say about the environment, there's a question about
Hmm.
environment, you need to give an opinion on that. Then take it one by one. Do it like a point wise. Like I'm sure a lot of people have given those CBSE and ICIC exams as we
Yeah.
grew up, right? So there's
Yeah.
always what our teachers told us, right? They're divided into these 3 4 points that you want to talk about.
Hmm. Like
So
an
before you get
intro
into
and the
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Hmm.
So before you get into writing it,
Hmm.
map it in your head. How do you want to tell the story? Take that 30 seconds on that 1 minute to plan out what you want to write and then get into it instead of just starting on to write and then going with the flow and, just like winging it. I would recommend you not to do it. Start planning it and then go with a nice stream of thought and write those sentences that
Got it.
flow
Got it.
better together one after another.
Got it. So
So
proper
that's
intro,
one.
body, and then conclusion.
Yeah,
So
conclusion.
Arshia, I
Yes,
think if if the viewers ask for it in comments, etc., which I insist you do, if they ask for further tips on writing, etc., maybe we can do another video on that. But
definitely.
it's for an overall view. So
Overall.
from writing, let's just move to the next two, which they say is what we should prepare for the most because those are like that's like math. So you can
Yeah.
actually score in listening and in reading because there is a right answer for each of them.
Hmm.
There's no ambiguity. So could you just
Hmm.
shed light on listening first? Because
Sure.
it's very important to, I think, score in listening. I think even if your overall score is very good, but your listening drops, then your CLB point
You're
drops.
absolutely right. Absolutely. So, just to sort of clarify what Momita is talking about,
Yeah.
there's an IELTS score that you have, and then there's a CLB score that you have. CLB is your Canada language. I don't remember the
Benchmark or
full form.
something. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, benchmark.
Hmm.
We'll be able to share that in. You can see that on
The
your
description.
Canada
Yeah,
PR
yeah.
description later. But CLB and IELTS work separately, and the scores are different. And what CLB is that a CLB 10 means there's a certain IELTS score that you need to have, and over there,
Yeah.
listening is supposed to be pretty high. A CLB 10 is generally in listening they expect an 8.5, which is a pretty like that's the highest you can get. That either it's 8.5 and then 9. So
Yeah.
in writing, there are a little lenient. It's a 7.5. In reading, they're okay. CLB 10 is 8. Speaking is
Yeah.
7.5, but listening is 8.5. That's where
Because you
you
have to
really need to
understand when
go.
you're in the country, you need to
Yeah,
understand what they're saying, which is
exactly.
why I
Because
think
listening,
listening is yeah, it's important. Sorry,
absolutely,
sorry to cut
absolutely.
you in
Listening,
again. Please carry on.
no, no. So listening, you're absolutely right. Listening is the part that they really want to test you on because, and even when you look at the questions that they ask in listening, right, they're about directions. They're about talking in a restaurant, in a workspace meeting. That's the kind of questions you get in the listening exam as well. And it's a
Yeah.
30-minute exam, and you have four different questions, four different formats. So generally, one of the questions will be where one person is talking and giving instructions and you have to fill in the right answers. The other will be two people talking to each other, and you have to track the conversation and according to the conversation answer those things. And the third would be generally either a map that someone is telling you about, and you have to mark, you have to understand the map. So all of these
Ah,
things are very, very life skills things that you will actually need when you move to a very Anglo country. So, so listening test is something that I honestly struggled with. So I worked harder on the listening test. Whenever I did like a lot of mock tests around listening, I realized that I was scoring less. So I'll tell you the tips that I sort of, picked
yes, please.
while I was doing it. For listening test, my first suggestion to you would be practice as much as you want, as much as you can. Listening is
Yes.
something that will need, all you need will practice. No amount of tips and how to do listening and those tricks will never work. Listening is just about doing as many listening questions and mock tests as you can do, and that's what will help you. And understanding that, okay, these are the kind of questions that come in listening exams, and that know-how will help you. So there are a few YouTube pages who do it really well. There's this YouTube page called the IELTS Listening Test, where you definitely subscribe to that, because they upload a listening test almost every day, and which is very similar to the real exam.
Oh,
So I would
great.
suggest, yeah, so that's a great YouTube channel for understanding how the listening test works. And
Okay.
another big tip that I would give for the listening test is that be very mindful of staying with what the audio is saying. That's a very
Great.
important part in listening. That's one exam out of all the four other formats that is very time sensitive. You only
Yes.
have 30 minutes, and you don't get some extra time that you can write later or you can come back to the question, because once you've
And you can
heard the
hear it
audio,
only once. You can hear it
yes, you
once. You can't come back.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so you can only hear an audio once, and what happens is that when they're narrating an audio and you're supposed to listen to it and answer the questions in front of you, it will
Yeah.
be in the flow that they're narrating the audio. Don't
Sure.
expect that there's going to be that. That's a problem that I faced when I was preparing for the listening test. I was looking for all the answers in different places. Maybe in the first sentence they'll talk about the last question of that section. That's not how it's happens. It's a very straightforward test if you look at it that way. That as the audio is going, you will keep finding the answers chronologically. It won't happen that the first line will have an answer to the fifth question on your paper.
That's
So
actually
be
helpful. Like
ready.
if you,
That's very helpful. Yeah, that's very helpful, and it doesn't throw you off. So don't try to look for the fifth answer on the first line, because when you do that, you'll miss what you're listening in the first line, and then you won't know the answer for the first few questions. So just yeah, so that's a very that's something, if you are mindful of, all of a sudden the test becomes super easy.
very nice. So that's a great tip,
Yeah.
Arshia. Thank you so much for that as well. And like I said, if we need more information, of course, we can always come back to you and do individual videos. If you can take time out of your busy schedule,
No, no, definitely.
we
Yeah.
can do more videos. So quickly moving on then from, so we've covered writing, we've covered listening. Next is reading, where I think, a lot of people are struggling. I've received some emails where they say that, reading is a little bit of an issue for us because we feel like sometimes it's the synonyms that they ask the question with, and sometimes what people do silly mistakes, like maybe on top the instruction is fill it with ABC, and they write three and they think true or false, they mess up true or false with ABC. There are multiple instructions, so that need to be followed well. So people was just telling me that, how they're struggling with these things. So could you just quickly shed some light on that as well?
Sure, sure. So I'll tell you what helped me with the reading test was that reading is a 60-minute test, and they have, I think, four questions, four different passages in the reading test. And I want you to know right now that the 60 minutes in the reading test are more than enough. Once you have that knowledge, then you take it slow and you read it well and you answer it and give it time. That's what you need there in the reading test. Be very relaxed in the reading test, because it's all there. The answers are on your left, the questions are on your right, and it's all there. It's the easiest, honestly, if you look at if you're just calm in that test. You just need to
Yeah.
know that 60 minutes are enough and plan it well. that keep a watch at your watch very closely, that you have, for each question you have that much time, and then focus on those questions very carefully. And a few tips and tricks that I can give you on that is that, like, one great thing that I learned about in one of the courses that I took for IELTS prep was that the best thing to do is, when you're looking for answers, read the question very, very carefully. Like you just
Yeah.
said, sometimes you place an ABC instead of a 1, 2, 3, or vice versa. You have to be very, very careful to read the question carefully. You don't need to read the passage 2 times, honestly. For the
Correct.
passage, just skim through it. You're not supposed to learn it. No one is going to test you on it later. What you need to read very carefully is the question. What are they
Correct.
asking? What are they looking for? If you just read the question carefully, there are some 2 3 things that you will know, and it'll make your life super easy. One is, when you read the question, you'll understand what part of the passage you need to go to find the answer. Then the second
Understood.
thing is, yeah, and the second thing is, you will understand that uh, sometimes the questions are written in a way that to actually confuse you, to help you to understand whether your cognitive skills are smart enough in English or not. That you understand that the twist in the question, you get it in the answer or not. So if you have to read it twice, read the question twice, but get it completely, and go back to the passage after that. Then the third thing is, then this thing, how to answer that question. It's always in the question, whether they need an ABC, whether they need you to match something,
Right.
whatever it is. It's always very, very clearly mentioned in the question. And the third final thing that can really help you is, again, mock tests. For reading passages, do as many mock tests as you can. The more you do them, the more easy it'll feel, the more relaxed you will be. And that's one great tip that you need for the reading test, because there is enough time. If you're relaxed, if you're prepared enough, you can
Yeah.
score pretty well in reading. That's one thing that I'm sure, for like, at least for Indians and Asians, that's something that they can easily do. Because other parts, maybe in speaking, there can be, we might have to work on our diction and accent, and be more clear.
Yeah.
In listening, we might face problems in understanding the accent that there is on the audio. But with reading, is something that all we need to do is use our analytical skills, read the question well, answer it well, and that's about it.
Which is pretty much like our comprehension exams in, like, in our CBSE and ICSE used to
Yeah,
have that. Okay,
yeah,
great. That's also superb. Thanks for your tips, Arshia. And I'm just telling everyone again that everything that Arshia is talking about, every link, everything, I will put it in the description. I will also put as much prep material as I can in the description, so you guys can take as much help as you need. And for any further question, you can always leave a comment on. Don't forget to subscribe, which I need to tell everyone, which I forgot to do in the beginning. And the next thing is speaking, Arshia. Now, as I think, as English speakers, I think we spend most of our day speaking in English. That's you and I, and that's people around us as well. But uh, now I've come across two sorts of people who've come to me and asked me questions. One, of course, was a person who said that I'm great when I'm talking to everybody, but I get really nervous when I'm sort of getting interviewed by somebody, and I know that I've come for an exam, and I kind of get a little jittery. And the other person is has natural issues with speaking in English. So they're both struggling in their own way, and they're both losing points. And what happened eventually, the person who was not an English speaker actually ended up scoring more than the person who was an English. And they, because of the jittery, the nervousness, they and I think a slight overconfidence also kind of came in the way. And the other person who had practiced it methodically ended up scoring more. So, do you
yeah,
want to just tell us what the speaking test is all about? If you can just tell us what happens inside the room when you go in,
yeah,
they give you time to prepare for your answer or not,
yeah.
just a couple of things like that.
Sure, sure. So, what happens in a speaking test is that you're given you made to wait outside the test center, and there's a room where there will be an invigilator of sorts who's there to talk to you. And when they call you in, when it's your turn, you go inside, and there's 2 questions that they talk to you about. One is something where they have a conversation with you, where you have to talk about yourself, and those are
Right.
self-related questions. And the other part is, they'll give you an abstract kind of topic where you have to talk about it. So when you have to talk about yourself, That's the part you don't get time to prepare, because that's about you,
Obviously.
and it's a conversation, and they ask you 2 or 3 questions from your profile, and you have to answer them in the most succinct way possible. And the other part is where they give you a topic, and they give you certain points that you should cover in that under that topic when you're talking about it, and they also give you 1 minute to prepare for what you're going to speak. So
Got
those
it.
are the 2 different parts. First of all, just to clarify what happens in a speaking test. And the person sitting in front of you is there to uh, have a conversation with you, and sort of a person, not exactly like, I understand the nerves in a speaking test, but what you realize over there is they don't look like they're here to test you. They're there to have a conversation with you. So if you imagine it, like, the first thing would be if you can just sit there and have a conversation with them, that's good enough. It's not you don't have to you're not giving a test to them in a way that they look like those teachers, hardened teachers, where you're giving that test. So I think anyway, sitting in front of the test taker, you will realize that you'll feel calmer than before the
It's
test.
like you and I talking right now. It's like regular.
Exactly, exactly. So if we can keep that in our heads, it helps. So just a few tips that I would give for people that for the 2 kinds of people that you talked about, that how there are people who are fluent with English, but when they get into the test, they don't they sometimes are not able to score well. What I have realized is that it happens when you don't prepare well. When you know the format very well and you've practiced enough, that you will be able to do well, you will be able to score well. It's not that difficult to score in a speaking test. They know that they're not expecting you to have an American or a Canadian accent at all. You can totally talk in your accent. The accent that I have is a normal Indian accent,
Which I
and you
think is the
can.
best accent in the world, by the way. Everyone gets it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just enunciate properly and just speak clearly, and that's enough. Don't be afraid that you need to sound English when you're speaking in English. So
Yes, that's a very, very important point. Yeah.
yeah, just talk like yourself, and that's good enough. And
Got it.
that's about it. And that you don't need to sort of feign an accent or try to talk in a different way. If you try to do
Got it.
that, that's when you will look nervous. You won't sound like yourself, and your sentences will break. You will be unsure of what you're going to say next. You might lose
Yes.
your train of thought. All of those things happen when you try to feign to be like, feign an accent or a style of talking. So don't do that.
Got it.
That's a big don't in the speaking test. The second tip that I would give is for the first part of the speaking test, which is getting when they ask you questions, when they're getting to know you. Keep the answers short over there. Keep the answers to only 1 or 2 lines. They're not expecting long answers over there. They ask you very pointed questions, give very pointed answers, but very well framed sentences, and that's good enough. Again, no heavy words required, nothing, no idioms or flowery, because you're talking about yourself. You don't need to be very poetic over here. It's a speaking conversation. They just need to know when you reach Canada, if someone asks you about yourself, you'll be able to tell them. And that's all the test is, the first part is all about. Now, the second part of it is more abstract. There you're supposed to think of a few things and write about it. So again, I would suggest for
Can you
that,
give us one example of what sort of like what were you asked?
like I was asked, what do you think about the sky? And then there were some 1 or 2 points I don't clearly remember right now. There were 1 or 2 points that they wanted me to talk about. So as something as abstract as that. So when I was asked, what do you think about the sky? I just pulled from my own experience as a child. I used to be in an astronomy club. So when they said sky, that just came to me all of a sudden, and then I decided to talk about that. That what I remember, what I saw in the sky when I was in an astronomy club. So that's the kind of questions that you get. Sometimes you get a few questions about. They're not very difficult questions, honestly. What they want you to they'll ask you very
Is if you
simple
can
things
speak
about life.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, that you can have a conversation. They won't have difficult general knowledge questions or political opinion questions. Never something like that. They'll be very
That
generic,
requires you
simple.
to watch the news or read something. It's going to
No, not at all.
thing. Okay. Yeah,
No,
that's a
no.
very, very
They'll
important
be
thing
very.
because a lot of people asking that do we need to read a lot of books and do we need to watch news before we go for our speaking tests? And that's not the case clearly. So
No, not at all.
that's also pretty great, Arshia. And Yeah, sorry if you had something else also to
No,
add.
no, no.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's about it. In the just one last tip that I would leave you with in the
Mm,
speaking test, the time they give you to prepare, use it well. Write down
mm,
the 4 5 things that you would want to talk about, and
mm,
not just points. Write some phrases that you
mm,
would want to use that help them see that yes, you know your vocabulary. Because what happens in those 3 to 5 minutes is that we forget a few words that we actually know, but while
हाँ,
we're talking in flow, हम भूल जाते हैं वो बोलना. तो
got it.
वो करने के लिए I would definitely suggest everyone to write those phrases, those 1 or 2 words that you know that you have in your vocabulary, but you can maybe forget them when you're talking. So write them down while you're preparing for it. That's about
Great.
it.
Great, 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 Arshia. I think that this really helps, and anyone who wants, sharper, more specific information on how to score a CLB 10, in IELTS, I think you can just write to me. You can send emails to me like you usually do, and I'll leave everything in the description box for you to go and get access to. Arshia, just one thing, like, is there like a one-line thing that you want everyone to know, that it's not difficult, or anything that you want everyone to know about IELTS, and that how they shouldn't panic? Like I always tell them, they don't be scared, and
Yeah,
just
yeah,
prepare well, and when you're prepared, you're anyway should be scared at all.
yeah.
Is there anything that you want to leave us with overall for the IELTS exam?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Momita. That's so true. There's nothing to panic about. And
Mm,
IELTS is a simpler exam than most competitive exams, honestly. And
mm,
remember that they're here to just test your English and not your general knowledge and other things. How much have you read, and how have well versed are you in difficult English? That's not the case. It's a
mm.
simple English exam to know your fluency. So one thing that I would leave you with: don't fall for paid courses. Don't think that it's a lot of preparation that's required. Just be well informed about the format. Just practice enough, do enough mock tests, and just prepare enough to be very confident on the day of the exam. That's about it.
Superb, superb. Thank you so much, Arshia. So there you are, people. Arshia scored a CLB 10 in IELTS and is ready to go to Canada. Her application is in process, and whenever that is, we hear from the government of Canada. I hope that she gets through. Apart from being great in English, she also happens to be a very, very, very close and great friend. So thank you so much, Arshia, for coming to my channel, Canada Calling, which I otherwise just make screen recording videos of. Today I think I'm going face to face because I think it was necessary. People have asked me for these videos. Thank you so much for giving me your time. So please like and share this video as much as you can. Stay away from consultants who ask you for money for absolutely no reason. You can get everything here and on other channels on YouTube for free. So please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll be back with more content. Thank you, Arshia. Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you, Mohammed. Bye bye.